The story opens with the brutal spectacle of downfall. James Mercer, the commanding titan of Mercer Corp., sits stone-faced as every major news outlet broadcasts his empire's implosion in real time. Corruption charges, fraudulent dealings, and years of ruthless business practices are laid bare for the world to dissect. In a lavish penthouse far above the city, his son Michael watches the broadcast with growing disbelief, every headline shredding not just the company's image but his own identity, carefully built around the Mercer name. But before he can even process the public humiliation, a deeper wound strikes. Michael learns that Samantha, the woman he trusted enough to call his fiancée, was the anonymous informant feeding Mercer secrets to the press. When he confronts her, her calm admission cuts deeper than any denial could. "Your family destroyed mine years ago. I just leveled the field." In one night, Michael loses both his legacy and his future, his pride gutted and his heart shattered. As the paparazzi swarm outside the courthouse the next day, flashing bulbs capturing his humiliation for the world to see, Michael feels the weight of total abandonment until Claire Donovan, his childhood friend turned steadfast public defender, appears at his side. She doesn't offer empty comfort or judgment. Instead, she shields him from the cameras with quiet defiance, her presence anchoring him when everything else has collapsed. In that moment, the hook locks into place. Michael Mercer has lost his family's empire and the woman he thought he'd marry, but standing beside him against the noise, the chaos, and the ruin is Claire, the one person who has always been real. Michael Mercer's life was carved by the iron will of his father, James, a man who measured worth only in power, never affection. Groomed from boyhood to inherit Mercer Corp., Michael learned to wear the mask of control, even as he quietly resented the suffocating absence of freedom in his own life. His engagement to Samantha, polished and picture-perfect, had always been more arrangement than romance, a union that reinforced the family's prestige rather than his own heart. But Samantha's betrayal shattered even that illusion, leaving Michael with nothing but the hollow echo of a future he never truly chose. Claire Donovan's path had been different, yet always tethered to his. Growing up in the shadow of the Mercer's sprawling estate, she learned early how wealth could silence and distort truth. Instead of chasing power, she pursued justice, fighting for those the system overlooked, her loyalty to Michael lingering like an unspoken vow she never allowed herself to act on. Around them, the Mercer family fractures. James, unrepentant, raging at betrayal and blaming everyone but himself. Elaine, brittle and broken, torn between protecting her son and clinging to a husband whose empire rots beneath them. In the wreckage of both public scandal and private heartbreak, Michael now faces the defining choice of his life: remain shackled to the Mercer name and defend a dynasty built on corruption, or cut himself free to build something honest, even if it means starting from nothing. Claire becomes his moral compass, standing firm where others falter, warning him with quiet urgency: "Your father's empire is already dead. Don't let it bury you too." The true inciting incident strikes like a blade. Michael wakes to headlines splashed across every major outlet, naming him not as a bystander but as a perpetrator in the Mercer scandal. Falsified documents, offshore accounts, wire transfers, contracts with his signature seem to place him at the center of his father's corruption, painting him as complicit in laundering and fraud. In one night, his identity shifts from heir to criminal, and an arrest warrant cements his fall. Desperate for answers, Michael storms into his father's office, only to hear James deliver his final, ruthless decree: sometimes, a son must fall for the empire to survive. It is the ultimate betrayal. His father has sacrificed him, the heir, to shield his own skin. Broken, humiliated, and with the world against him, Michael finds his last ally in Claire. Where everyone else sees a criminal, she sees the frightened, furious boy she once knew. Against her better judgment, Claire steps into the fire, taking his case as his legal defender. The dynamic between them shifts irrevocably. No longer is she simply the girl who stood by him in quiet loyalty, now she is the one standing between him and ruin. The betrayal by his father and fiancée leaves Michael stripped of all privilege, bound only to Claire, who becomes both his lifeline and his greatest risk. From this moment on, survival and justice are no longer abstract, they are deeply personal, and tethered to a fragile, dangerous intimacy between them. The rising tension closes in like a vice, stripping Michael of any illusion of safety. Once proud friends avoid his calls, colleagues distance themselves to protect their careers, And even his mother, too fragile and frightened to stand against James, pulls back, leaving him suffocating in isolation. The only constant at his side is Claire, who throws herself into building his defense, though their late nights over case files often blur into moments of raw vulnerability. For the first time, Claire admits she once admired him from the shadows, even as she grieved watching him bend beneath his father's control. That truth deepens their bond, sparking an undercurrent of intimacy Michael both craves and resists, terrified that pulling her closer will only endanger her. Just as trust begins to grow, Samantha returns like a ghost, swearing she never meant to ruin him, only his father, and offering to help if he can forgive her. Her presence tears at his scars, pulling him between fury and the aching desire to believe her. Claire, however, sees through the act, warning Michael that Samantha's loyalties were always for sale. The final blow comes when Claire discovers hidden documents buried in the Mercer's records, proof that James not only framed Michael but engineered Samantha's betrayal as a calculated move to break his son's will. With every truth unearthed, Michael's world shatters further, forcing him to confront the darkest reality. His father didn't just sacrifice him, he weaponized love itself to ensure his obedience. The climax erupts in the packed courtroom, every eye fixed on Michael as he takes the stand, the prosecution relentlessly painting him as a greedy heir complicit in his father's crimes. Each question is a blade, slicing at his reputation, until Claire rises and begins dismantling the case piece by piece, exposing inconsistencies in the evidence with a precision that shifts the air in the room. Then, with calculated calm, she delivers her ace, calling Samantha as a surprise witness. The tension spikes, the room crackling with anticipation as Samantha, cornered by Claire's cross-examination, finally cracks under the weight of her guilt. With trembling hands and a voice edged in shame, she admits the truth: James manipulated her from the start, ordering her to leak documents and framing Michael as the scapegoat to shield himself. The revelation detonates like a bomb, gasps echoing as the courtroom erupts in chaos, reporters scrambling, the empire James Mercer built collapsing in real time. Outside, amid flashing cameras and shouted questions, Michael faces his father for the last time. His voice is steady, but laced with years of buried rage. "You destroyed me to save yourself." James doesn't flinch, his reply chilling in its arrogance: "I created you. Without me, you're nothing." For the first time, Michael doesn't waver, he turns his back, walking away with the weight of finality, severing the chains that bound him to his father's corruption, and claiming the freedom he never believed he'd have. In the resolution, the wreckage of James Mercer's empire finally settles into place. James himself is indicted, dragged into the same courtroom he once thought untouchable, his legacy reduced to ruins. Elaine, after years of living in denial, finds her strength at last and files for divorce, cutting herself free from the man who poisoned both her marriage and her family. And Samantha, disgraced and hollow, vanishes from the public eye, her betrayal leaving Michael scarred but no longer shackled by her hold. Against this backdrop, Michael is offered opportunities by wealthy investors eager to see a new Mercer dynasty rise, but he turns them all down, refusing to repeat the cycle of corruption and control. Instead, with Claire by his side, he establishes a non-profit legal foundation, dedicated to defending those who, like his own family once did to countless others, were crushed by corporate greed and abuse of power. The work is not glamorous, nor does it carry the glitter of his old world, but it is honest, redemptive, and his own. In this quieter new life, healing takes root. Claire and Michael no longer circle one another with hesitation. Instead, they allow themselves a steady, fragile honesty. One evening, amid stacks of case files and the hum of a small, overworked office, Michael looks at her with a rare softness and says, "You were the only thing that didn't fall apart." The words are not grand, but they are real, and for both of them, they mark the beginning of something genuine, a future built not on power or deception, but on trust, resilience, and love that survived the fire. The final moment of the story plays out not in a boardroom or a courtroom, but in the quiet stillness of the city where Michael's family once reigned supreme. Months after the dust has settled, he returns with Claire to the towering skyscraper that once bore the Mercer name in steel and glass. Once a monument to wealth, power, and fear, it now stands abandoned, windows dark, its lobby hollow, a husk of the empire that defined and nearly destroyed his life. For a moment, Michael simply stares up at it, waiting for the old bitterness to claw at him, for the weight of his father's shadow to press down. But it doesn't. Instead, what he feels is an unfamiliar calm, a deep release he never thought possible. Beside him, Claire slips her hand into his, grounding him the way she always has, not as a savior, but as an equal, a partner who walked through the fire with him. Together, they stand in silence, letting the city breathe around them. Michael's thoughts carry the quiet, reflective weight of everything he has endured. When empires fall, we think it's the end. But sometimes, it's only the ruins that leave space for something real to rise. The skyscraper that once chained him to a legacy of corruption now feels like a gravestone marking the past, a past he has chosen not to inherit. With Claire at his side and their new foundation already lifting others from the ruins of similar betrayals, Michael no longer sees the fall of his family's empire as his own downfall, but as the clearing of ground for a different kind of future. He turns from the skyscraper, not with regret, but with a small, steady smile, ready to step forward not as a Mercer heir, but as his own man, finally free.